This episode of The Watch is presented to you by Amazon Prime. Ever have a plan come together out of nowhere and realize you're missing something? Like a last-minute beach day, a spontaneous hike, or an outdoor movie night you didn't plan for? That's when Prime same-day delivery has your back, getting you exactly what you need, fast and reliably, so you can actually join the moment instead of watching from the sidelines. Same-day delivery, it's on Prime. Visit amazon.com/prime to find millions of items delivered fast, available in select areas. Terms apply.
I need support staff to clear the room.
Stand up and walk. Now.
Hello and welcome to The Watch. My name is Chris Ryan. I am an editor at TheRinger.com, and joining me in the studio today is me. No Andy today. It's just Prince alone in the studio. I am, however, joined remotely by Lane Brown from New York Magazine today. He's going to talk to me about his incredible piece in New York Magazine called "The Feed is Fake," which scratches an itch that I have been having for a long time. Especially ever since, the whole "is geese a psyop" debate raged online, and yet I don't really know if it raged anywhere else. And that's sort of what Lane's piece is about, is why it always feels like everyone is talking about something, but nobody is actually talking about it. He gets into the exploding industry of clipping for social media feeds, but also narrative manipulation. And then his piece is also like a much larger kind of essay about the current state of our cultural conversation and our understanding of what is popular and what matters, which is something that I think Andy and I always grapple with on this pod. But I am going to talk a little bit about some TV news and also give you a few thoughts on last night's episode of Euphoria. As far as like what's coming out this week, as always, busy week in new television, but I didn't get a chance to watch any of Dutton Ranch, and I have to be completely honest, Beth and Rip, when it comes to the Yellowstone universe, this is a Yellowstone spinoff starring Kelly Riley and Cole Hauser. Their characters were beloved on Yellowstone. I think that they worked really well as supporting characters. I'm not so sure I want to watch a television show entirely dedicated to them. And you don't have to, because Annette Bening, amazingly, is also on this show, as is Ed Harris. But I will try to get to that at some point. Other new releases this week include Maximum Pleasure Guaranteed, which is a new series on Apple TV with Tatiana Maslany, and it seems like it's a little bit of a normal suburban woman goes down a crazy rabbit hole when she witnesses something she shouldn't. Looks like a thriller with some social satire. I'm interested to check that out. Also, we have from Netflix, I believe this week, is The Burrows, which is being kind of dismissively or casually referred to as old Stranger Things or new Cocoon, but it is about a retirement community and an incident, possibly supernatural incident or extraterrestrial incident. Always had problems with that word occurring at this facility. So great cast, Alfred Molina and Alfre Woodard in it, but haven't got a chance to check out any screeners of that. That comes out this week, and I think Eddie and I will probably hit both Maximum Pleasure and The Burrows at some point. As far as TV news, I mean, the biggest thing is that the Lanterns trailer dropped. I know Andy talked about Lindelof last week in my absence. This trailer is awesome. The pairing of Kyle Chandler and Aaron Pierre is the backbone of that's like how a great TV show gets made, is you find the right two people and you fit them together. And Kyle Chandler as this kind of rugged and sort of self-involved version of Green Lantern, and Aaron Pierre is the up-and-coming one who wants to do everything right. It's like a very solid basis for a show, and there are Watchmen vibes in it. There is more special effects than I think I was expecting from the trailer, and maybe that's they're putting that forward a lot in the trailer just to bring in the DC heads, but it was a little bit more comic booky than I thought, because I think the original sort of understanding of this show was that it was essentially like a True Detective, but happened to be set in the DC universe. It'll be great to see how it actually shakes out. I'm super excited for this series. I think what we're going to do with Widow's Bay, obviously, the last episode, the one that focused mostly on Patricia Cato Flynn, we've been singing her praises all season, but this is her standout episode. I won't give anything away if you haven't gotten a chance to see Widow's Bay yet, but we'll talk about a brick of episodes together. Maybe on Thursday's show, what we'll do is do 4 and 5 together. I do want to talk about Euphoria, though. And in honor of my colleague, Zach Lowe, I put together a 10 things I like and don't like about Euphoria. Episode 6, Stand Still and See. So for those who don't know, Zach Lowe obviously now has his own podcast with the Ringer Podcast Network. I worked with him at Grantland and now at the Ringer. And while he was at Grantland and at ESPN, he had kind of like a great column called 10 Things I Like and Don't Like, which was his notebook dump on the week in NBA that he had been watching. This is similar for this episode of Euphoria. I just thought it would be an easy way to kind of move through what was not necessarily my favorite or least favorite episode of all time. I thought it was like a needed setup for what is obviously going to be an incredibly cathartic last 2 episodes of the season. I would imagine it's in play of the series, but we'll see. First of all, I would say I loved number one. I love the collection of images that he put together, charting Rue's longing and receiving of her sign or salvation. I mean, in the church, look, Zendaya, well lit in a church, praying, hearing a call from her mother. You know, her face looks like Passion of Joan of Arc. You know, like this. Sam's got a bag, and he goes into it. And I think, especially in the Rue sequences about her trying to save herself, is where the show is still at its best. And I think that her experiences over the course of this series are the most easily legible from the outside, where you're like, I can see what happened to this person and I can see what this person wants to become. The images at the end of the episode, she's listening to her book on tape Bible and it starts skipping and she almost crashes. She sees the bright light of the incredibly well lit monster truck or 18-wheeler coming towards her and crashes her car or pulls off the road, and a spark gets on a tree and lights this burning bush, and you get this incredible biblical image of this woman finally hearing the voice of God, you know, and the connections to the road to Damascus, the connections of Christ and the burning bush. Like, it's obviously rich with that imagery. Does it play fast and loose with it? I think with the Rue stuff, it doesn't, because so much of what addicts go through in recovery and in trying to save themselves comes from this relationship to a higher power. And that may or may not work for all addicts. And there are plenty of people who get clean without it. But obviously, it's something that Levinson is deeply fascinated by. And it doesn't even have to come down to any specific dogma of something you'd find in the Bible, something you'd find in the Old Testament or whatever. It's just about believing that your life has value. And that's obviously something that Rue is looking for. And it leads me to one thing that I don't really like, which is what we've kind of done with the Jules character. Rue goes to Jules at one point in this episode and kind of makes her pitch for starting a family together and finding like new problems to have and more classical American suburban concerns of, you know, what to do with your kids and stuff, rather than fentanyl and sex work. And I think that Jules's reaction to Rue was good. I liked the slap. I liked the get out of my painting. If you think about this show as these people existing in their separate realities, I liked the idea that Jules was sort of snapping Rue out of whatever dream she was having and was like, you know, you don't actually have anything to trade here. Like, we are not gonna go off and ride into the sunset. This is not the love story. Whether or not that remains the case for the rest of the series, I don't know if I believe that, you know, maybe to the extent that you care about something being endgame on this show, but like, are Rue and Jules like meant for each other? I don't know. I don't know if it's actually germane to the actual show itself, but I did like that scene. I don't really know what they're doing with Jules. And I don't know, you know, this was the things of behind the scenes in this production of this show and what it required to get people in the same room to shoot it. I think I sometimes allow myself to get a little distracted by that, because I'll be like, oh, you can tell this person wasn't available and they had to shoot all their scenes in like a hotel room. Like, I don't know if Hunter Schafer had more or less time than usual to shoot, or whether or not there was like discussions about what to do with Jules' character. But I find like she had her artistic breakthrough on the set of LA Nights, and now seems to be in her I am going to do a body study figure and then paint over it as like her new like art phase that she's in. I don't know if that's like really that compelling television, but I like Hunter Schafer as a performer, so I wish there was more for that character to do. As far as more things that I liked and didn't like, look, I love the high and low, and I love the sacred and the profane. I love the church and the OnlyFans and the spaghetti westerns and the Polanski dread, the Hitchcockian moments, the 70s noir. You know, I think that Levinson moves pretty easily between those. And if anything, I think I've oft repeated, I'm never bored watching Euphoria. It's because of those tonal shifts, which even if the transmission really grinds sometimes on them, I still welcome them. It's still fun to have a completely different feel from scene to scene. You could say that it's mimicking kind of like our feed. You know, it's like when you flip through social media videos and you're kind of like going from one thing to another without any kind of transition. That would be one way of looking at it. Another is just that he had several different shows that he wanted to make, and he's just going to make them and then stitch them together. I think that's also, you could make a criticism of the show, but in terms of like the spectrum of tone that he's playing with, and also like reaching very, very, very high, and then also wallowing around in the grime and the grit of something exploitative, I think is pretty fascinating to watch. I also think it's really interesting, and I really like the tension between cinematic and TV storytelling. I thought it was very funny when Sydney Sweeney walks onto the set of LA Nights for her one-line, pretty much throwaway day player part, and starts improvising or disassociating with the actor who's playing opposite from her, and that she obviously is kind of thinking she's talking to Nate. And she does this kind of riff about how, you know, scared she is for her life right now. And the guy is kind of playing along with her, and it's then shattered by the character of Oceana walking onto the set and saying, like, are you going to cue me up or what? I was very, very highly amused by Colleen Camp saying, yeah, this is giving a real Clute vibe, because I think everybody is always like, in their mind, they're making Clute, you know, like in their mind. I'm sure everybody would love to be Alan Pakula in the 70s and not for Clute to be what everybody was watching. But obviously they're making LA Nights. And I think that there's almost a sly commentary happening there where it's, like Sam Levinson is making like an episodic spaghetti Western opera, but he's also making a soap opera, and he's trying to sort of pay both pipers there. And I like the effort. You know, I don't think it's successful for everyone. I know that Andy has both rejected some of the storytelling and also the interests that Levinson obviously has. But he's also given it the college try. So I appreciate him doing that for me, because we're enjoying talking about the show. I think that Levinson, for as much as he's interested in high and low art, he's also interested in television and cinema, and whether or not you can bring the feeling of cinema, the cinema that he loves. And Sam's actually programming a festival out here in Los Angeles over, like, I think it started last Friday and it's going through this week, where he's showing a bunch of movies that he says influenced season 3. And he's showing like Dirty Harry and Candy Snatchers, which is like a Agfa movie that you should check out. And he's showing Freeway, which is like the Reese Witherspoon 90s thriller. So he's like throwing a bunch of different like things up on the mood board. And it's hard to take all those cinematic influences and consistently make a television show. And maybe that's why the production of Euphoria is inconsistent, because it's difficult to translate all of that stuff. But I am enjoying it. I will say that one thing I also enjoyed was Daniel Deadweiler as Alamo's mom. The character introductions on Euphoria, a hallmark of Euphoria, the sort of backstory, flashback moments. Your mileage may vary on these, but I don't know that I necessarily walked away from that scene truly understanding Alamo any more than I already did. But but I did think this little message in a bottle from 70s grindhouse movies, or it actually wasn't really like that, really. What was it? It was more like an LA noir set in 70s Black Los Angeles. And some people might be like, the temerity of Sam to do that. I don't know. I thought it was pretty cool. Like, it looked great. Daniel Deadweiler, I will watch read a phone book, but seeing her play this Alamo's mother, who essentially runs a long con on a kindly but, disfigured man to set herself up with her boyfriend, is awesome. It was a cool little snatch of time, and obviously Levinson had a blast making it because it just looks great. Told me nothing about why Alamo was riding at Rue with a polo mallet while she's buried up to her head in sand, and told me nothing about why he doesn't kill her. So I enjoy Daniel Deadweiler. I don't know if that segment necessarily was necessary, quote unquote, but it was very cool. I think it's also cool that we're returning to meta Euphoria. This is a degree of playing the hits, but one of the season 2 highlights for me was the show within a show of Lexi's play depicting on and off-screen events. The LA Knights thing has potential. It's coming. They're calling this pitcher in at the 7th inning. I like the idea of Lexi being responsible for writing Cassie's arc on LA Knights, and also Lexi perhaps thinking of how to kill off Cassie's character. And that little throwaway line that Lexi has where she's just like, what am I going to do? I'm going to kill her. And then I can't remember, is it Gideon Adlon who's playing that friend? I can't remember, but she's just like, you got to kill somebody every once in a while or else people get bored. That does not bode well for our ensemble. Somebody may pass away in the last 2 episodes. I liked that return to meta Euphoria. If that was sort of Cassie's long-term goal, was just like fame no matter what, instead of making tons of money to help Nate, I think that this arc for her would have been kind of interesting. Unfortunately, and this is my 6th thing, Cassie's OnlyFans modeling is kind of getting in the way of this show being legible to me. The further out we get towards Cassie and Nate, that's where the show gets really muddy. And on its own, it's kind of amusing. And I like how every scene with Sydney Sweeney seems to be from another universe, whether it's like that Hitchcockian kind of tension of whether or not she's going to delete OnlyFans. We talked about the sci-fi B-movie stuff of a 50-foot woman from a couple episodes ago. Earlier in the season on the wedding night, the kind of almost Ari Aster-ish horror of Nate's, getting his pinky toe chopped off. Nate is shrinking, Cassie is growing. But this leads into my 7th thing, which is unfortunately also something I don't like, which is just Nate. I think they're leaving a lot on the table here because Nate is actually closer to Rue than anyone else. I mean, he's looking for redemption. He's trying to find a piece of the American dream. He's trying to shake off his past, which we get a glimpse of the old Nate as he stomps on the protected flowers that have held up his retirement community construction. But we get so little time with him, and he gets almost no time with anyone of consequence from the show, that it's kind of hard to tell how he got there and where he wants to go. And now we're in this ritual humiliation phase that's lasted the better part of the season. And this is my biggest question mark about where they want to go with this character. You've got Jacob Elordi. It doesn't really matter one way or the other if he's having fun. I can't tell. But give him something to do, please. Let's do something with Nate. Can Nate interact with anyone else from the show aside from Sydney Sweeney? I don't know. But it would be nice. It would be nice to get him. I loved that moment with him and Hunter Schafer at the wedding. Like that actually had a charge. Let's do more of that. Kind of don't know where I'm at with Maddie. 8 is not a thing I don't like, or like I just like Alexis Demi, and I love like this character historically on the show. Her being a shadow madam of OnlyFans models who is now curious about Alamo's business, and her pursuit of like financial gain for security to like gird against like everything that's happened to her in her life, not dissimilar from Alamo, I guess. Her reactions to things, I think, sometimes are a little convenient for the television show and have nothing to do with the character. I think that's like understandable in terms of writing a TV show. You have to have people just kind of go along with stuff. But we're getting towards the end of this season and series, and I'm not exactly sure how they're going to bring together like the Alexis Demi part of this show, the Nate part of this show, the Jules part of this show with the thing that's the most successful, which is the Rue part of the show. Though there is one thing that's starting to bug me about the Rue part of the show. And after I've sort of like waved away every criticism about like, well, what about this and what about that when it comes to like talking with Andy about Euphoria this season. And I'm like, you don't get it. It's a vibe. It's a feeling. Just go with it. The crime plotting is starting to get to me. That's, I don't know if this is actually 10, but I'm calling it 10. We're doing too much and explaining too little here. Lori is going to give up Alamo to the FBI, thus forcing him to work with her and allow her to use his, I guess, ambulance service to bring fentanyl from Mexico into the States because the border is closing. I'm not sure I buy that. Typically, like in crime dramas, like the threat of revealing someone to the FBI is like more of like a marking your reputation. And I think that Alamo wouldn't be just so like, checkmated by Lori. Now, I know Alamo has ulterior motives here where he's also trying to get his stuff out of Lori's safe and perhaps everything else that Lori has. But this seems like it's one extra, like a hat on a hat. Like Lori and Alamo's collision course and the presence of the DEA on the outside via Rue is good. That's a good beef. They should have a shootout and work this shit out. Like whatever. Let's get these characters getting after it. Now being vaguely in business with each other while also intending on killing one another and robbing one another is a little thin. And then, I'm not so sure why Rue is being given all these important gigs if seemingly everyone in Alamo's crew knows she's a rat. So we obviously end with the rat, and we have the rat and the snake for Rue before she goes on the road. She's terrified because her mother is now in danger. We know that Alamo never lets a woman get over on him, but I don't really understand why Rue is now becoming the agent of revenge against Lori. It doesn't seem like she is the most dependable person. It's not like she's like she's not a burglar. She's not a gunman. She's just a convenient person to work in a strip club and manage the girls until she wasn't. I don't really understand why not, like when everybody shows up at Alamo's house with guns, I don't really understand why the shootout probably should have happened then. And now we're off for another element of this. This was among the more, amusing parts of the show for much of this season. So I hope that they tighten the screws a little bit. I have a feeling based on what we saw as the trailer for next week, that next week is going to be largely focused on Coleman Domingo's Ally character and how that, seemingly his health incident impacts her. So I wonder if I had to guess, it's like take a beat and then the big crime happens in the finale. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know when the moment is, and I don't know how much it's going to feel like a series finale versus a season finale. Those are my thoughts on Euphoria. I want to get into my conversation with Lane Brown. So I introduced Lane a little bit in the beginning of our convo, but I'll just tell you, I've worked with Lane about 15 years ago when Grantland started. Lane is somebody I've always really admired, and he's now a features writer at New York Magazine where he does some really, really, really great reported pieces. And the thing that makes this Feed is Fake piece so fun to read to me is that it's really, really deeply reported, and it's really fascinating to read about all these different methods that digital marketing companies are using to populate our feeds with clips of shows and music and movies that we're then supposed to be talking about, supposed to be ingesting. But it's also about like how the narrative around those things gets shaped. And then really more, it's Lane kind of writing this, awesome rant about like, how do we even know what things are actually popular, and does that even matter anymore? And we had talked about the geese psyop controversy on this show and on Wait a Second a couple of weeks ago when it really popped off, and that's what really got my interest in this going. But I've also had this like nagging feeling for a while. I've noticed a really perceptible change in the tone of online discussion, like no shit, but not in the way that you think, not in like this everything is getting angrier way, but that like everything kind of is starting to sound the same. Like I'm starting to just be like, I can't tell the difference between the post above and the post below if you read on Reddit. Or, everybody's Instagram is starting to kind of like merge into one Instagram, and this kind of everything is being optimized for engagement, because I think that this is like become way more important than connection with other human beings. Like, yeah, on your stories, you might, be following what your friends are doing at any given moment. And that's kind of like my primary use of Instagram. But that whole other side of it with Reels, and then I think especially for TikTok, where people are making content more or less, has led this to our phones being like our new connection to what we think a conversation is about culture in the world. And Lane writes about that beautifully. And I really wanted to talk to him about this piece. It's kind of a different look for the pod, but I thought it would be fun on a random Monday to do this. So thanks so much to Lane Brown for joining me, and thanks to Kai and Sarah and Kaya for producing today. I'll be back on Thursday. We're going to talk about Widow's Bay. I'll have a guest, and I'll get into deep Widow's Bay lore then. But thanks to everybody for listening, and let's get into my conversation with Lane Brown. My guest is my former Grantland colleague. I should put that first. And current New York Magazine features writer Lane Brown. Lane, it's so great to see you, man. We were just remarking that I think the last time I've seen your face is as you were leaving Los Angeles and I was arriving in Los Angeles.
Chris moved in and I moved out. Yeah, it's and it is an honor to be here on my favorite podcast, the only organically popular podcast in the world, and
also maybe perhaps the least clipped in anybody's
exactly.
No, actually, we are doing more clipping. Last week, New York Magazine published Lane's article, which is one part deep dive into the exploding clipping economy that has taken over algorithms, and one part Jeremiah about how this shadowy industry has distorted our understanding of the conversations taking place within our culture. I think that's if I had to pitch it to anybody, I suppose that's what I would say. And for people who've been listening fairly closely to The Watch over the last couple of weeks, this stuff has come up in conversations even though we haven't known it. I think most notably, Andy and I more or less jokingly talked about the stuff that happened with Geese, the band Geese, a couple of weeks ago. Wired Magazine wrote an article about Geese's marketing company, or the marketing company that works on behalf of Geese, that Geese is a client of. And John Semley wrote an article called "The Fanfare Around the Band Geese is Actually a PSYOP." Actually was a PSYOP. And the piece is largely about the unorthodox practices that Chaotic Good used on behalf of Geese. But this is like, Lane, I wanted to know, that's like sort of my in on this article. I saw this. There's a funny story I have to tell you, like after we hear from you for a little bit. But, I think that was sort of my in on your article. But what was the thing that kind of was like the kernel of the idea that got you to write this piece?
It's sort of a two-parter, basically. I feel like I have been noticing things, just every story I try to write, just in my sort of daily intake of information. I'm looking on Reddit. I'm seeing, what the voice of the people is on, in the internet comments. And I don't know. I've kind of noticed just sort of more and more things. I don't know, little strange. And so I did a story on real estate a couple of years ago. It was all about how New York City rent prices were just sort of exploding at a time when basically people were leaving the city. And just in these New York City apartment Reddits, and just they would be full of people saying like, this is not happening. Nobody's leaving. People are moving in. People are flooding back. It's like, this is just totally not the case. So I sort of noted that. And I saw kind of the same thing over and over again as I was working on some other stories. And then I found this service. I'm not going to say the name of it because I maybe don't want to give them, I don't want to do any product placement here. But basically, there are services that will essentially advertise your product within Reddit comments. And I thought, this is really, they've really figured something out here, and they've got me. And so I've kind of, I've been begging my poor editors at New York Magazine to let me write a version of this for so long. And finally, the Geese thing came up, and suddenly this was a thing that was, sort of in the conversation, and I was finally able to break them down. But after years of sort of twisting their arms, and so they finally kind of let me take a couple of weeks and sort of dig into this. The other thing too, also, is I have no idea what's popular anymore.
Yeah.
As somebody that cares a lot about culture. I was the culture editor at New York Magazine for a long time, and my job was kind of, all right, figure out who people are going to care about in 6 months so we can put this person on the cover. And it used to be kind of simple to do that. We had, things like ratings back in the olden days. And so, that was fairly easy to do. And it got harder and harder and harder. And now I just have absolutely no idea. Like I was thinking, do you have any idea what is more popular, the Bear or the Pit?
I don't know. I think definitively in this case right now, the Pit. But I think cumulatively, culturally, when you think about the footprint of the Bear, people saying yes, chef, the way people maybe started dressing because of the way Jeremy Allen White dresses on that show, it's a different kind of influence. It's maybe people saying things and not even knowing that yes, chef is from the Bear,
Right.
But it goes hand in hand with there's different kinds of impact that shows can make, and I think we, over the course of our lives and especially working in music, there are bands that are important and there are bands that are big. And that's always been a tension in the media is to are we making too big of a deal out of a band just because we personally like them? So we're going to fashion some narrative about why this is the only band that matters. When there is objectively NSYNC or somebody who is exponentially bigger than the White Stripes or something like that. And that kind of back and forth has always been really fascinating. And like you, dude, I don't think there's ever been a time where I've been less certain of not only how many people are watching something. And you get at this in your piece where you talk about when you really start to go in about all of this stuff being made by companies that have no incentive to share how people are watching it, how deeply people are watching it, how much they're paying attention to it. It's so complicated now. I'm sure you've had this experience now when you're even talking with friends or if you go to a bar and TV or movies come up and the amount of siloing that's going on now where somebody is yeah, man, I am a for all mankind, every scene completist. And then the next guy over is I have no idea what you're talking about. And both are conversant in television.
Right. Yeah, it's every conversation about culture has to have that sidebar about where you sort of justify how popular you think a thing is, and it's I was talking to my niece about this, or you always bring in this as your evidence, a cooler young person that you know or something that is somehow more tapped in than you, or I was at brunch and I overheard this and everything, and it's in theory we should be able to track this stuff better than ever.
Yes,
everything is, but yes, there is no incentive on the part of these companies that are making this stuff to actually share that data with us, and so we are just trying to look for every sort of strange little signal that we can find about how big one thing is, and kind of unfortunately, in this vacuum that we have now, it's become really, really easy to sort of fake these signals of popularity. And so I feel we do not have a very clear view of reality, which is kind of strange. And so I wrote mostly about TV, pop music, sort of celebrity gossip, the frivolous stuff. But it's you can obviously see the implications for everything here. It's we're getting all of our information right now through the same sort of rectangle in our pockets through social media, and it's so easy to sort of get a distorted look at just reality with this, and so it's kind of terrifying.
And it creates an ecosystem in which I think that I'm sure you find this challenging as a reporter and as a features writer, where I think in my romantic conception of what my dad used to do as a newspaper journalist, even though he was a film critic, but he would still have to gather a lot of information, especially when he was a crime reporter. The crime reporting happens in the courts, you would go down to the courthouse and sit there and wait for an interesting case and then be oh, this is good. This was a rich kid got into a car accident and is trying to get out of it. This is a good article, or this is a good hook for a piece. But we're deriving a lot of our concept of what is popular or what is unpopular or what is beloved or what is being said about all those things from online platforms that are very susceptible to the kind of manipulation, data inflation and also narrative construction that in some ways I'm like, the game is the game. And I think you've probably heard some pushback about this piece where it's like, how different is this from, say, Payola? How different is this from street teams plastering stickers all over a city for a band in the 90s? I was wondering if you could give our audience, without aggregating yourself, because I do want people to read the piece, just an idea of what clipping is and how it maybe is a little bit different from, say, a digital marketing campaign for a band, a TV show, a movie 10 years ago.
Basically, if you've got a song or a movie trailer or a TV show, you take it and you cut it into social media friendly clips, like short 20-second clips. And then you find a bunch of dummy social media accounts that will post all of this online at huge volumes. And essentially, as you do that, you are tricking the social media platform algorithms into interpreting it as basically a sign of organic interest in this thing. And so when that happens, the platform sort of push these videos far and wide to users who ordinarily wouldn't have seen it. And then sometimes they will kind of engage with it, and that will sort of add even more fuel to the fire too. It's a thing that started only not too long ago. It's probably at this point 4-5 years old, but really kind of in the last year, it's really sort of become a thing that everybody's doing. And it's from Geese all the way up to Justin Bieber to Bad Bunny, and so it's tiny artists and big artists and everybody in between are doing it.
Do you feel like it grew out of something organic? So, like, obviously, TikTok and Instagram Reels, one of those like sort of pillars of how you make stuff on there is to soundtrack it or interpolate clips of things. Like, I follow a Thick of It memes account on Instagram where it's just scenes from the thick of it, being posted all day long. And I'll just be like, oh, that's a funny line. That's primarily how I've like rewatched that show in the last 2 years. I don't really know that there is a lot in it for the Thick of It producers to have that still on my feed, but I'm curious whether you think that this has become a weaponization of organic fan interaction or if it's something different than that.
That's a good question. It is really, really hard to tell, and I feel like that's kind of the point. I think that the people doing this probably learned from things that actual, fans were doing, and they saw that it, worked in one way. But now it's like the volume is different. It's, it's not just a couple of fans making, adding a song to a clip of Euphoria or something. This is like 50,000 videos of the same thing being sort of dumped into social media all at the same, over the same weekend to basically kind of like overflow the toilet and sort of get this, sorry to be scatological.
But obviously, sort of as a watch listener, you should know that's fine.
I think why it's different from, sure, there are people that say that, this is Payola, fine, has always kind of existed. The fact that we don't have any trusted culture metrics at all anymore to tell us what's actually, popular or not, is sort of one thing. And so we, in the olden days, you could check a street team, people putting up stickers or something against like SoundScan sales, and you could kind of see the gulf. But now there's just nothing to sort of check this against. It is just trivially easy to do. It is like so simple. It's everybody's doing it. It's at a scale that I think is different. It's like, it's not just in one city that this is, you're putting up posters. This is like, you're blasting this out to the entire universe of, TikTok's user base really, really quickly. And so the scale of it is pretty different.
So the clipping stuff happens obviously on video, but you were talking a little bit about the feeling you were getting reading Reddit threads. And I certainly agree that there seems to be, over the last couple of years, I can't really pinpoint the moment, but it reminds me a lot of like, Twitter, I think, went from this thing that was sort of everybody's running like gag journal over the course of a day and was very much directed towards like a select group of followers. And then like right when we started working at Grantland is when I think it became the primary promotional tool for journalism in the world. And there was that had its benefits, and obviously also I think made everybody slightly insane. And then now it's kind of like a rage factory where you go and if you look on your For You page, at least when I do, there are people having these like insane arguments about things that I'm like, wait, why are you guys even fighting about like how My Bloody Valentine isn't that good. Like, who started this fight? Why is this now like crossed over to 6 different friend circles that I seem to have or businesses, and like some guy from Bloomberg is like, actually, My Bloody Valentine is the best. And I'm like, why are you commenting on this?
Yeah.
There's this, I digress just to say, with Reddit, I noticed a real collapse of voice. Like everything started to sound exactly the same. And obviously on Reddit, you can comment anonymously. And if you click on someone's user profile, often they'll be like, this person is hidden like their activity. How much of what interested you about this project was not only like the obfuscation of data, the inflation of the sense of popularity that people can have, but also the shaping of narrative around cultural objects?
Clipping is sort of one technique. The other thing that they're doing now is this thing, Chaotic Good sort of put a name on it. I don't know if this is the name sort of used by everybody, but narrative campaigns, where they are basically, using internet comments, using dummy accounts to comment on things in a way that makes it seem like, everybody is talking about a thing in kind of the same way. And so you see it on Reddit, you'll see it, you'll see it happen on Twitter. A couple of people that I talked to, I thought this was sort of interesting. It's like clipping is something that you want to do at, huge volumes because you want to push this out to everybody. Narrative campaigns are a subtler thing. You actually don't want that many people to notice this. You want kind of the right people to notice this. You want, it's sort of like a light sort of sprinkle of sort of like narrative juice on a story to kind of shape something. And then, once you do that, you can then use these other kinds to like amplify certain arguments too. And so, it is really interesting because it's like, it seems like a lot of the pop culture fights that we've had over the past, I don't know how many years have basically been seemingly the result of some of these techniques. And so in the story I talk about, one example is like Bad Bunny in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
For a month, this was the loudest argument in America. The NFL has hired this Spanish-speaking artist to perform, and then people are upset about that, and other people are sort of defending this. And it turns out that basically these bot detection firms that track this kind of thing found that basically the shape of the argument was exactly the same on both sides.
Yes.
And these accounts were basically posting at the same time, maybe in the same time zones, which is sort of suggestive of something coordinated. And so, when you think about that, it's like all of these things that we're just, at each other's throats about all the time. It's like, how much of that is real? We have no idea.
I was talking to a friend of mine who's a lawyer in the music business about your piece and about the Wired piece about Chaotic Good and Geese. And he was like, I wonder if the guys who did Cambridge Analytica knew that the end point of this was to get a Geese song on a montage of Sixers highlights. That I would, it's like
dreams come true. Yeah.
But the Bad Bunny thing is a really good segue into the thing that I wanted to ask you about. I was talking with, both, I guess your former colleague in a sense at Grantland, Kirk Goldsberry, who works with us at The Ringer now, and we were chatting about, for some reason he hit me up about like, why is everybody talking about the Kevin Hart roast? And I was like, yeah, me too, although I don't know who's talking about it, because really what's happened is it has been atomized down to its 30 most important 30-second clips, completely decontextualized from like the fact that was like a 3-hour show on Netflix that I find roasts like super uncomfortable to watch. Honestly, don't understand them at all.
Excruciating, yeah.
And yet it is, I think Kirk called it like my junk feed, where there's all these things that everybody I talk to seems relatively conversant in, but you can't find a single person who's like, I absolutely made time to watch a 3-hour roast of Kevin Hart and have an opinion about it. And there's tons of stories like that. Like, I am a person who likes the Bad Bunny I have heard, does not give a shit who plays the Super Bowl halftime show, and like was very aware that was like a weaponization that worked for both parties. Like, whether or not Bad Bunny or Bad Bunny's label or Bad Bunny's marketing company participated in that debate, I think it's actually like important that he gets to play the halftime show, but it can't, and I thought his performance was really good, but it's like that kind of thing where I'm like, how the fuck are we talking about this for a third week? Like, and who actually is like, every day I wake up and go to bed thinking about the Super Bowl halftime show.
You really do have to wonder how many of these people actually exist. Who gives a shit about anything? Like, people have enough on their plates. I would think. I don't know. I can't imagine being upset about enough about anything to sort of log on and go off anymore. I talk about Justin Bieber using this for Coachella. At least we think so. Somebody paid to clip Justin Bieber's Coachella performance, and I really thought, I don't know if I have to go into witness protection after this. Like, am I going to be? I mean, is this going to be? Are people going to be after me this weekend? I was out walking around. I didn't hear from one believer. And so it really, it's like, just how much of this how many paper tigers are there out there? How much of this is real? It's like, we hear about these fan armies that are supposedly just, burning people's houses down every time you say a negative word about whichever pop star. And it's like, how much of that is real? How much of that is just bots sort of, bullying, people into submission? Who knows? It's really, it's a strange world out there.
But there is like real world implications to it. I mean, obviously, like, our political landscape is completely like shaped by this kind of online discussion. I mean, going through the Los Angeles mayoral race here now, and you can see a lot of the old positions being taken, that the same ones that have been sort of people have been manning since 2016. There's like a sort of progressive spoiler candidate. There is a far right wing reality TV like candidate. Like, there are two people kind of in the middle trying to scrap to see who's going to get into the runoff, and watching people talk about it online. Even sometimes people I personally know, I'm like, oh, it kind of feels like if you're going to actually take the indignity of posting, you are still parroting one of like 7 pre-agreed upon positions, right? And most of the time, I think it's almost reflexive now that people say things. I find this sometimes even talking to Andy, I'm like, I don't know how to make my point without making it in an extreme way, right? Like, I don't know how to say, like, I acknowledge this without saying I hated it or I loved it. And I think that that's something that I see a lot in criticism and in online discussion of culture now, where it's like the idea of something being like a 2.5 star, 3 star out of 5 star thing has completely vanished, because even if you think that, there's like a really vocal contingent of people somewhere online, or quote unquote people, who are like, this is actually the GOAT sci-fi show. This is better than 2001. And you're like, God, man, I really don't think so. But that doesn't mean I think it's an unredeemable piece of crap. I just don't want to spend 30 hours watching it, maybe. Yeah.
The negative engagement, the stuff that starts arguments, is the stuff that sort of goes further. And so I think that's more of what you see. Well, okay, Spencer Pratt is obviously clipping it up.
Yes.
He's got clipping campaigns started going full time. Although he is to his credit, at least, I think he's, because of election laws, he's got to disclose it, and so he's the rare sort of clipping campaign that actually you sort of know where it's coming from. Most of the journalism in the world now has sort of disappeared behind paywalls, and so we are getting the TLDR version of stuff for the stories that we're not subscribers to from the tweet about it, or the quote tweet, or the comment in,
or the argument about it afterwards.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And so the terms of the debate are basically set by whatever that argument is, which is really easy to sort of amplify a real thing or just completely astroturf it from scratch. And so it's so I think that's probably another reason why you're seeing it's like everything is the most extreme kind of fight that it could possibly be, because that's it's somebody benefits when that happens.
Yeah, and you see, I mean, this has been going on since we were kids, but you see all the time on the left and the right, political candidates, television shows, pieces of music, movies, TV, whatever, are essentially rejected from trying to occupy some sort of like middle ground. Like the stuff that really kind of at least drives conversation is the stuff that's going to be, and increasingly the more extreme kind of version of whatever we're talking about. I always try on this show, Andy and I always have this kind of running conversation about doing something because it's covering a show because we think it's popular. And there are shows that are hugely popular, but not necessarily within the algorithm that we follow. So something like, say, I think Taylor Sheridan shows are a good example of something.
Yeah.
I cannot honestly say that we would do as much Taylor Sheridan coverage if those shows weren't obviously very big.
Right.
Taylor Sheridan also would not have made 13 shows in 4 years if he wasn't big and if Paramount and hadn't decided like this was what we're going to bet the farm on. By that same token, we cover Euphoria on a week-to-week basis. I think that's a very big show. Most of my friends have stopped watching it. So it's always this murky thing feeling around in the dark for a light switch. And the thing that's funny about what you were writing about, especially when you're talking about Geese, which is a band that I like, and I kind of wonder if you don't, based on your description of how Cameron Winters sings.
I like a good, caterwaul. Yeah.
But I was mildly offended by I'm not being manipulated, man. I like Geese. I I started liking Geese 2 years ago. Did you come across anything in your research or in looking online and seeing these Discord servers where people are, begging someone to clip Apple TV shows or what have you, where you were like, oh, well, I like that thing though.
Chaotic Goods roster has got some good stuff on it. So it was kind of maybe a little bit, disappointing, I guess, to see that. But I also, I also understand it's this whole system is so broken that you kind of need to do this. You're either in or you're out, and so being in means sort of resorting to some of these sort of shady techniques. I was in these Discord servers for 3 or 4 weeks, and basically I would ask the publicists of the people being clipped, is this something that you did? Is this something that was paid for by the the artist and their team? And nobody wants to talk about this. Everybody's doing it, but I think for understandable reasons they don't want to talk about it because it is just kind of lame, I guess would be the word. It's really sort of a bummer that this is what we've come to. But at the same time, I totally understand why Geese or McGee or whoever has to do this, because one of the things that this does, it's not just the artists that do it are sort of in the conversation. It's basically everybody who doesn't do this is sort of left out of the conversation. You can't hold it against too many of the artists themselves. It's I feel like it's more of a information ecosystem problem that is complicated. Yeah. I blame the platforms, I think, more than anybody. At
one point you mentioned one of the chaotic goods narrative shaping tactics was if an artist has a performance on Saturday Night Live at midnight, you're posting it, and the narrative, the comments under the video should be, this is the greatest live performance I've ever seen. This is the best live show I've ever seen on Saturday Night Live. We have our new strokes. We have there's an obvious echo of there's this a sort of excellence or supremely amazing thing that's happening, rather than cool, they played on SNL or whatever geeky thing some fan would say if they saw their favorite band playing on SNL. I was wondering whether or not you felt you kind of mentioned this with the paywalled media, traditional media sites, but whether or not you felt this had kind of filled this vacuum where I don't even know where I would go now to find out what someone thought of an SNL live performance anyway. I mean, when we were coming up, there were plenty of things that recapped Saturday Night Live on Monday. There were plenty of articles where it was it sure seems like this band is having a moment. That would kind of shape maybe a narrative around it. But that's not in the artist's hands. The artist is hoping that John Perellis at the New York Times or somebody at Rolling Stone is into them enough and is yeah, that was good. But, it's easier maybe to say, have like a lot of like a stan army of Ashley Padilla fans who are like, this is the new Kristen Wiig. I don't know.
It is really hard for culture journalists, and I think just journalism in general, to know anything anymore. I think that this is like, I don't know where to go to find out what's actually popular. I used to think that I had my finger on things, but all of the advertising sort of moved to short form video.
Yeah.
All of the websites that you would you'd sort of go to find out what a writer sort of thought about this stuff. If some of them are still hanging on, but it's like quite a lot of them have disappeared. And so it's I don't know. It's really tough. I don't think I am no better at anybody else than anybody else at figuring this out. I'm like just fumbling around in the dark here.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like there's a degree to which there's like, I would actually be curious to get feedback from this conversation from people who are not necessarily working with it within the media or are not handcuffed to their laptops 12 hours of a day and kind of working for 7 of them, but also like ambiently looking online at stuff. Because I do think that phenomenon, while it gave us careers, it also is kind of why sometimes it's really hard to tell, like, is there a whole world out there that doesn't give a shit about X, Y, or Z thing that we're writing about or arguing about? I know there is. But what do they care about? Because it's maybe they are not watching as much TV or listening to as much new music or care about whether Obsession made $15 or $16 million this weekend, but they're engaged with culture on some level or else. Like, we cannot be propping this entire thing up. So how do they get their information, and how seriously do they take what they see on their feeds? It's an impossible question to answer, maybe.
It's sort of a culture emergency. But the people I worry about maybe the most, though, are the artists themselves, because nobody has any idea what's popular. Nobody knows what people are actually responding to anymore. This is like we talked about. Okay, like in the old Grantland days, we covered a show like Mad Men, which 300,000 people watched, but we understood that the people that watched that show would maybe come to our website and read about it. But now it's like the and we knew it wasn't as popular as Big Bang Theory, for example. But I feel like it's impossible to compare something like Beef to House of the Dragon. I have no idea which has sort of more of an impact. You just think of an artist trying to pitch something right now, and it's like, I don't know what they don't know what kind of feedback they're getting. Sort of their market research has just sort of been run through this whole sort of distortion pedal of social media that really kind of warps everything. Yeah, so like it's hard to know, and so I feel like I think about how the fact that every show on TV lately seems to be sort of derivative of like the White Lotus, or it's like we had I know a couple of years ago, like the agencies were telling everybody, it's like, all right, no more Knives Out riffs and anything. And it's like, I kind of wonder, were those like the last 2 shows or the last 2 like culture products that we sort of had hard numbers for the original things, and now we're just sort of reinterpreting them into perpetuity because we have nothing else that with like real data on. It's so
hard because but back when you and I were working together, like something like Homeland would come on. It would be a sensation for 2 years. I mean, it was a very popular show for its entirety, but like those first couple of seasons of Homeland were like, it felt like you would come in on Monday and people would be like, let me know when you're ready to talk about Homeland,
Right.
And that's what this, like, literally this podcast is built off that premise, that there are these 5-10 shows a year that, yes, Andy and I are happy to recommend 100 shows or 20 shows in a year, but there are going to be 5 or 6 that like we feel confident, like that Mad Men group of people are going to be like, I want to talk about this or hear people talk about it. That Homeland thing that would then lead to 10 Homeland ripoffs that would have varying levels of success or critical appreciation. And then they would kind of shed that and get out. But you're right. It's like, I don't even know what I would try to imitate now. Like, I don't even know what a show, like White Lotus is a good example. I think that there's a lot of reasons for that. One is, I think shows, TV networks maybe are like, this is great because this is like a very controlled environment. You can isolate people. So that's essentially like we don't have to worry a lot about extras. We don't have to do a lot of set pieces. Like, it's just find a good location, have a mystery, and then have people betray one another. And that's great for us.
Totally.
But I'm not sure what a show now. The Pit, I think, would be the best example of, I think that Max and other places will start to try to say, how do we get a 16 episode procedural up yearly, but have it be stickier and more maybe long lasting in the psyche than, say, the Chicago Dick Wolf empire or a procedural on a network.
Right.
But I don't know. I don't know if you can like recreate that magic. And by that same token, if you clipped it enough and if you had and if you had the faction of Pit fans who seem to be talking about these people like they're actual humans instead of fictional characters, maybe you could manufacture like an illusion that your Pit rip-off police procedural or Pit rip-off family drama was actually as big as the Pit. I'm not sure.
Talking to some of the people I've talked to, I believe you could. Obviously, shows fail all the time. Obviously, things get canceled all the time. Things just don't work. Things, don't catch on. It feels like there's a way to sort of put your finger on the scale a little bit more than there once was, and you can sort of declare a hit by fiat a little bit. I don't know. I think you guys were having a conversation the other day about Apple shows. And it's like a hit on Apple is different from a hit on obviously Netflix or any other service with more subscribers. And so you're dealing with things at totally different scales. And so if a show without a lot of viewers, its survival prospects on Apple TV are probably better than they are on
I think
Netflix. And so
there's something to Apple's volume play is still modest compared to Netflix. They seem to be way more willing to bring shows back. I don't know what their budget and model is, and if it's different from show to show. Like, I will routinely see renewal announcements or a new season of something that's in season 4 or 5. Traditionally, a lot of these places, they wrap things up by season 3, either because they see like an attrition in viewership or because that's when contract renegotiations come up with cast. And I don't understand the economics of what Apple is playing at. It's pretty much a write down for them in their larger business. So I'm not sure. And then you get into something like Netflix, like you're saying, where their data to me is incomprehensible.
More people watched Bridgerton season 3 than watched the moon landing. Is like my favorite stat. None of it makes any sense. Everything is incomprehensible. Who knows? But interestingly enough, so one of the things that I mentioned in the piece, the Night Agent was something that was being clipped, and yet, sort of, if you look at the numbers they released, that show is massively popular. It's like every episode is watched more than the Super Bowl or something, at least in season 1 or 2, I think.
I guess.
And so what is the? So then why do we need clippers at all? So it's I think we have a. I don't think we have a clear view of any of this anymore, and it's getting I don't know, it's getting a little scary. So I'm a single issue voter at this point. Real hard culture metrics.
Bring back Nielsen ratings.
I think that would fix a lot.
Let's wrap it up by discussing like where you see this is going next, because this piece begins and ends, if I remember correctly, with was it Joe Lim, the guy from Floodify?
Joe Lim,
who your piece starts with an assertion from Joe that 90% of what you're seeing on your feeds is essentially fake advertising and or shadow advertising. It's essentially like there is like some $1 per every 1,000 views incentive for somebody to post it, and that statement kind of chilled me to my bone, because, if I kill 25 minutes looking at my phone, I'll have one part of my brain that's like just smoothed out and is looking at cats and soccer highlights and whatever. And then there's the other part that's like, isn't it weird that like I've just gotten 11 videos that are the same template or have the same similar prompt, or like something like Top Jaw will be popular, and then 150 Top Jaw style shows will be in my phone all of a sudden, of like guys getting interviewed on the street about what their favorite something is. But Joe seems to be suggesting at the end of this piece that this is all coming to an end. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So Joe thinks basically he thinks eventually people are going to stop trusting what they see in their social media feeds. He thinks this has gotten so bad, and I think I sort of agree with him. It's so clear. I think people really are noticing this more than they used to. That there's just so much astroturf that he thinks eventually people will be turned off from this. But he thinks that the clippers, or at least the people that are doing the clipping now, they're going to basically be sort of directing all of this content at AI.
Yeah.
And so soon, maybe we're not going to open social media apps. Maybe we're just going to have our AirPods in, and it's going to, Claude or ChatGPT is going to tell us what TV shows to watch, or what music to stream. And he thinks that if they hit these LLMs with enough sort of volume of stealth marketing, that will basically sort of trick the LLMs instead of tricking.
Even now, so like the other day, I was like, who was I thinking about listening to? It was some band that had 12 albums, and I was just kind of like, I'm not quite sure where to start, and I just did a usual Google search of X artist ranked, which gives you a Gemini summary of what the 2 or 3 peak albums are in terms of like critical appreciation, but also these are the cult records. And then obviously there are the Reddit threads where people are ranking them. There's like rate your music threads. There's all these things where you can kind of find that information. But I noticed, and I think everybody has this experience now, that they're very rarely going past that Gemini summary of the answer to your question now. And so that vision of the future, that idea of basically your Google result being a prompt you give your AI agent, essentially, where you're just like, hey, I want to listen to Salem. What's music like? Like, what are the best witch house songs? And it creates a playlist for you, or it tells you like people like this. It's like, well, where are they getting that information? Like, where is this? Where's the learning happening? And I would imagine that there's also a worry that like AI agents probably already are operating multiple like social media feeds, and just working from a prompt from an actual human owner are populating our feeds with this kind of stuff.
This happened to search first. It's like where search has just been completely sort of overtaken by spam, and that's I think where we're headed with social media. And so people I think are eventually going to escape. I do kind of wonder if it's like some of this is purposeful. It's like Google is, they want you to use Gemini. They don't want you to use their search engine anymore. And so maybe they're tanking, on purpose here and pushing you to Gemini. And so, then Gemini will then take in this, huge amount of undisclosed advertising, and then sort of spit that back to you in the form of, supposedly personalized recommendations. I find it too. I ask ChatGPT all the time. It's like, what are 5 albums that I've never heard before that sound a little like, I don't know, Alligator by Echo and the Bunnymen or something.
Yeah.
And they'll spit me back like incredible recommendations that I never would have found any other way. I feel like this whole thing is sort of coming for that. I think
a bald record store employee is like, I could have told you if you had just come to me, I would still have a job. Oh man, Lane, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been awesome, and this piece is incredible. We'll link it in the show notes, obviously. And you can read Lane's writing on New York Magazine. I'd tell you where to follow him on social media, but you're probably just an open claw agent looking to blast him with geese propaganda. Lane, great seeing you, man. Thanks again to Lane Brown. You can read his piece in New York Magazine. We'll have that piece in the show notes for the pod on Spotify. As always, you can watch us on Ringer-TV on YouTube. You can write us at thewatch@spotify.com. Follow us on Instagram at thewatchpod_. It's very funny to say these things after having this conversation with Lane. I wonder if Kai feels any extra pressure with clips this week after, can you put up geese numbers, dude? Thanks to Kai and Sarah and Kaya for producing, and we'll be back next on Thursday. Take care.